here. We do have a short meeting today, and we'll move through our agenda. So I'd like to welcome everybody and point out and thanks that it's been a little while since we've met. I know we have a lot that we're doing, but I just want to thank this team for helping provide some focus. We know that our goal, Rob, I want to thank you. Thinking about our goal for this team is to look at recommendations that we need to make to our legislative team, look where we have opportunities, where we're doing well, and where there may be gaps or things that we can close the gap. And today we're going to take a lens and look a little bit more on social determinants and disparities in Delaware relating to aging in place. So that'll be our focus today, and we may need to dive in more. Want to thank Will for organizing us today, and the rest of the team. We may have some resources that we can share today, and then we'll probably need to dig a little bit further. I also want to say thanks to Kathleen Purcell, who many of you know was co-chairing this committee. I don't know if any of you have had personal conversations with her, but she did let me know that she needed to step down from that role. And so I'm going to keep moving forward, but knowing that all of you are, in a sense, also the drivers of this. And so we'll say honorary, we're all honorary co-chairs of this moving forward. But many thanks to her and her contributions and her leadership through this time. Let's see, does anybody have any other remarks or anything that they'd like to make as part of our welcome? Carolyn, we'll note that you are with us now. Thank you. And let's just say thanks for everybody for bearing with us for the start today with some technical difficulties.
Yes,
with that said,
I apologize for being late.
Oh, no apologies. We're all in the same boat, and we all had a little technical challenge. So we'll have a speed meeting today, move things along. The next thing that we have on our agenda is review of the previous minutes. Did everybody get those?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Rob, thank you. A second?
Motion.
Thank you. All in favor, signify aye.
Aye.
Any noes, any dissent? All right, thank you. The minutes are approved, and we will move forward from there. Next on our agenda, one of the things that if you've been following along, I want to, again, thanks, Will, is looking at our strategies and looking at disparities that exist. And so we need to kind of open that conversation. Will's done some research for us, reaching out to colleagues and also some professors at the University of Delaware for some of our background. We need to dive into this and take that lens of where are the disparities within our state, and how can we make recommendations around those. We will also dive into what we had talked about last, food insecurity and aging well. And Melissa, I apologize. I know we had some conversations, but we would like to explore that in more depth. And we had hoped to have some people here, but I think based on the work that the Division of Aging is doing, Carolyn, what your organization is doing, we might be able to talk about that at a high level and see if we want to involve any others in our conversation as we move forward. So I'll just throw out the big question of, as we talk about social determinants of health and disparities within our state. Where do you all go with that? Is there anything from our plan with the state, Melissa, calling that out, or are there things that you would direct us to? Maybe I'll turn to you first in terms of what's been developed. So.
Okay, I don't think I did my homework well enough for that. So
putting you on the spot, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So relative to the agenda, just generally, well, globally, that's where we're headed. We're looking at ways that we can engage individuals that are beginning to age, because aging is really our whole lives, and certainly, captured by half or a last third of our lives. And so how can we've been really looking for ways to both leverage funding, but looking for successes in supporting individuals, adopting and supporting healthy lifestyles, looking at ways that we can offer different kinds of supports to encourage movement and physical activity, meeting people where they are, also looking at ways to engage individuals and thinking about lifestyle choices and how we can support them. And so I think that touches all of the different pieces of social determinants. And so while I don't think we have solutions, we're right there looking for ways to see how Delawareans might be better supported in making choices that can help them age with vitality in the communities of their choice, and hopefully avoid some of the deep end, services needed later in life. And so we're really right there, interested in what different nutritional supports we can offer through education, through meal planning and nutrition support. So that's kind of where we're looking to do more in nutrition. We're looking at physical activity and what different ways we can make physical activity available to older adults, and also looking at ways that, I guess, getting back to our other committees, social services and also isolation, how can we engage individuals, not just with us as the state, because not everyone wants to be friends with the state, but how can we foster better communities? I think, again, a crosswalk is with caregiving, that we've really seen that caregivers want to pay it forward and really reach out to one another. So how can we foster communities where individuals in like situations can share lessons learned, share information, and offer peer supports as well. So that's a really high level kind of vision and direction of the division. And there's a lot of ground level stuff in the works to try to get us there. So it's absolutely why I wanted to join this subcommittee, because I was hoping for some ideas and some direction from other parts of the system on what might already be available, or what seems to be one of the priority areas that we can get started on.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Carolyn, to the question as well, and the work that you all are doing, as you're doing that, are there things that your agencies are seeing, especially as we're looking at, disparities, or are there specific communities or areas that that you're focused on in that regard?
I would just want to jump on there a little bit about what Melissa said about the caregivers. And I think it's a really important thing that we have the support groups, and I think that we need to expand on that. My concern also has to do with like the reimbursement rate and everything that the state gives the service providers. It's, as if you look at the inflation rate right now and cost of staffing and everything, we need to really take a close look at that, because obviously if we don't have everything in place to provide the services, then we're going to be lagging behind. So we need to take a look at where we need to go with that, so we can continue to provide the good services that they need.
Right.
Can I just follow up on, thanks, Carolyn. I mean, I think everyone knows, believe this is the top priority, as well as the funding rates. And I say this in part because they're also one of the most neglected things in the state, right? It's not just about like money, like everyone needs money. It's that everyone needs the money because it's been neglected. I mean, some of these rates haven't gone up. They've gone up once in 12 years, I mean, she's right, 7% just this year. I mean, annual inflation is usually somewhere between 2 and 4%, right? So at least that's at least what my accountant says. I don't know if that's real or not, but that matters, right? And that matters to our workforce. And I don't want to have any illusions that Delaware, relative to some of the rest of the country, is doing better than some, not as well as others, right? But in that sense, but I've said this before, Chris and Melissa, that affects the social determinant of that is very obvious, right? This is a workforce that is predominantly women and women of color. They are servicing a population that is wholly, in large part, Medicaid, which I don't think I need to go into the statistics here about kind of the social aspects of people who are on Medicaid, generally speaking. And so, like, I hear that I know we have this other list, but I do think, aside from the food security stuff, which is the clear winner, right? That was number one on our list. That deserves the most attention from this group. But, you know, I can't understate the importance of the workforce issues, and couple that to the fact that the state is getting older, like, very rapidly. And the workforce is getting older very rapidly. One thing since the last time we met, I believe, that has kind of come out in full force in the media, and please forgive the long-windedness of this, is that the Great Resignation, which is real, I don't think it's just a political talking point. I think there's reality to it. I think some of it's a political talking point, but it is very clear at this point that our workforce, a healthcare, I don't even want to just say home and community-based services, healthcare across the board, is dramatically affected by it, because the people who are leaving are older people who are either close to retirement or have greater anxiety about walking into a facility or a situation where there's a potential health risk. And if you look, I would be willing to guess that most providers, I would be willing to guess that, in addition to being majority women and in large part people of color, that the age range is on the older end, right? And when I say older end, kind of 45 and up, right? People who are past big decisions necessarily that dictate their lives, in the sense they're not just having kids right now, so they're just like, I'm going to stay here for 10 years and then figure it out, right? These are people who are past those thresholds and are making decisions about their health and about retirement and things like that. So I just bring that all up because this is data we have, and there is a lot of supporting data out there. And by the way, the last thing I'll say, and then I swear to God, I will stop talking. The New York Times in the early January released an article that cited the Department of Labor statistics, stating, and this is a good thing, that wages were generally going up 4% from last year to this year, which is a positive thing. However, healthcare workers were significantly behind their partners in retail and the leisure and hospitality industry. And those are other high priority areas of government funding, right? Like, I'm not sitting here telling you that amusement parks, right, are having staffing issues, and so they're just going to raise all their prices. Like, these are areas where you saw a lot of CARES Act funding, a lot of ARPA funding, a lot of attention go into those, as they deserve, right? But the point is that once that funding is complete, like those businesses have a lot more free-wielding flexibility to do what they need to do to attract the workforce. For people like Carolyn and Kimberly and Allison and myself, we're very tied to government funding beyond that stuff, beyond that federal hand, those federal supplies from, COVID and things like that. So I'll just leave it at that as a hard evidence of supporting Carolyn, rather.
Thank you. And that's, we're back to, and we have another subcommittee that's looking at workforce, but we're back to that, even though we're looking at social determinants and disparities within our communities, it's so tied in. And so that reimbursement rate and cost of who's joined us before. I missed you on our welcome, but Kim, you're here from Christiana Care Home Health as well. So I know you might have some of the similar comments. And Allison, I saw you were going to chime in as well, too.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I would say that Rob's understanding of the age of our workforce is absolutely true. Most of our workers are older, sometimes well beyond 45, sometimes people that are, close to retirement, but decided to work part-time for, certain periods. So those are definitely struggles for us. But it just related to what you were saying. I mean, all these issues are directly related to who has the ability to get the services they need, right? And in order to age in place successfully, most of us need assistance at home. And so whether that's someone who's a care worker who can help prepare your meals, who can go to the grocery store for you, who can, get you the food you need. Obviously there's Meals on Wheels and other wonderful resources in our communities that help with these things, but care workers do play a pivotal role in that as well. So the workforce issue kind of weaves itself into everything, I think, at this point. And I know you were saying that, Chris, but I just wanted to kind of echo that.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Allison. Kim, did you have a chime in as well on that? Welcome.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks for asking me to sit in. And I appreciate the perspective. And from my vantage point, I see a lot of patients coming back and forth from home to the hospital. And when I look at their situations, a lot of times what brings them back to the hospital are the social determinant of health pieces. Some non-skilled care or some support with meals and transportation could make the difference in the success of patients being discharged from the acute care settings or the skilled nursing settings to home and remaining at home successfully. So I'm really grateful to hear all this information, because it's a platform that we speak of a lot within our home health agency. And that's a big goal of ours, how to keep people out of the hospital and aging safely at home.
Thank you. Robert, did you have anything that you'd like to add on the discussion?
Absolutely. I apologize. I can't figure out how to get my camera enabled. So
No worries.
just certainly I agree with Carolyn, Rob, and Allison. It's very difficult to continue to service clients in the Medicaid waiver program because the outside forces are we should be at $15 an hour of pay or more. And when you have such low reimbursements, it's just not cost effective to continue to want to help people through the program. And basically, that's really what I feel about the program. It's really helping people that may not necessarily be able to afford the services through a private pay mechanism, but just being able to help them with a quality person in their home to be able to assist them with all those tasks that they no longer can do for themselves. So it is very important that the state look at how we can stay pace with the market and increasing the reimbursement rates so that we can retain those healthcare workers and attract others from other industries that are quite frankly paying a lot more. I just came from a economic briefing this morning, and McDonald's is paying like $35,000 a year. So it's very difficult to retain workers to be able to service clients if we can't compete because of the reimbursement.
Excellent point. Thank you. So I think we have rounded that out. And if we're going to talk about making any changes where we see disparities, we've got to have the team members to be able to do that, and the programs for people to access those services and the right reimbursement. And, wrapping back to even the state plan, Melissa, is to look at the opportunities for individuals who might be able to get onto Medicaid or access other services. We know that there, like you said, there are more people who would qualify, but at the same time, we need the reimbursement through that program too.
And just to tie that back to this, so I feel like we're a little concerned that these workforce issues take us away from the kind of the theme of this subcommittee. But I can't stress enough that the workforce issue dramatically impacts, people who are of means will just pay for it. They will just find a way to pay for these services outright, right? And so, it's like everything else in this country right now. That delta just gets larger, right? Every year that goes by without greater workforce support. And so, that is at the heart, I think, of social detriment, right? And all of the issues that we've already identified in our survey just get worse as a result.
Good point. Okay, so we have another agenda point and topic. So I think this is something that we've got our recommendation. We know it's workforce, we know it's reimbursement, we know those will be drivers. Any final comments on this topic, or we could jump into food insecurity or insecurity discussion. Anything else on this? No. Okay. I will one thing though, and Will, maybe you want to jump in here, or at least I will comment. There is a lot of work that you did in reaching out that I think we want to pass along to this committee, so that we are well informed in our recommendations about geography throughout our state, where there may be disparities. Or just well informed on all of the issues. Will, are you there? Do you want to chime in on the work that you've done for this committee?
Happily, yeah. So actually, just yesterday, I met with Julia O'Hanlon, who's one of the researchers from the University of Delaware's Institute for Public Administration, specializing in aging and aging in place related topics. She provided me a trove of resources, covering a lot of different things. And she's very quick to say that aging in place is a multifaceted issue, and that services are just a single piece. That's a pretty consistent thread from the academic perspective on the topic, and a lot of it deals with housing, location, and those sorts of things. But at the same time, a lot of resources to consider about how to best kind of not think of the elderly population as a single homogeneous group, but rather very diverse group with diverse needs. So I'm very happy to provide those resources. I'm also happy to synthesize them into something maybe a bit more workable, because there's a lot of information there. But something that I think could be really interesting is there is a heat map of homebound individuals throughout the state, showing where potential need would be with meal delivery services. But I also apparently during COVID, the COVID pandemic, there's been changes to those eligibility about what defines homebound, which can give some idea of where people are in that precarious state where they maybe don't necessarily qualify for state services, but are still at need, to help kind of think about in a geographic sense where to best focus resources. That's a lot, but I'm happy to provide that information to the subgroup.
Well, thank you. I think that would be really helpful, and especially, your final comment segues us to our next agenda item on food insecurity, and that would be interesting to look at geographically, and where do we need more of our programs like that. Carolyn, maybe you have some of that already from what your organization does, but we did hear from you on our larger work group about the work that your organization is doing, and also connecting people to case management as well, which is an innovative program, and kind of some of what we've been talking about, trusted resources. So Will, if you would circulate that to the group, and then we can take a look at that. That would be great. And with that, let's turn to the next discussion on food insecurity. And Carolyn, do you want to maybe kick us off there and refresh this group on what you're doing and what your thoughts are?
Well, Will touched on the COVID clients, and I'd like to discuss that a little bit, because the guidelines for the people on the Meals on Wheels program did change, and Melissa instructed us to feed the people, and that's what we did, because nutrition sites had to shut down. And so we had a group of people who traditionally had come in here, and they couldn't come in for their meals. So until we got the grab and go going, we did put them on the Meals on Wheels program. So at some point, there's going to be a new evaluation, and those people are no longer going to qualify for Meals on Wheels. As far as I understand, we're going to go back to the criteria. So that's going to create some issues, because those people, even though they qualified, but they didn't really qualify because they couldn't come in. So there's going to be a big influx of people. And I also want to go back, and I checked just the other day, because I know we've done a lot of meals, and when I checked, we did 483,000 reimbursable meals, either through MCO or Title III in the past budget year. So that's a lot of food. And now, as we are revamping and trying to get people in the MCO program, I'm going to take it right back to where more people are coming on board. And again, in order for us to do the quality meal that we need to do for them, there needs to be a real close look at that reimbursement rate so we can hire the staff, buy the food, deliver the food. Delivery of the food has been also through COVID has been an issue. Because I think throughout the state, most of the volunteers there are quite elderly. We have people that are 90 years old that are delivering meals every day. And the younger people, we can't seem to get the younger volunteer force to come in. And maybe that's because, you know, they're all working. So they don't have time to volunteer to the community. But there's a lot of impacts that are going to hit us within the next couple of years. So we need to start preparing for that now, because there's going to be a situation.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, I apologize. We had some conversation between our last meeting and this one, and thank you for your work. I know we were looking to bring in other resources, but do you want to speak to the issue and your thoughts?
Sure. I mean, I think I would start by just echoing everything Carolyn said in terms of the response effort from our Meals on Wheels providers, and really just finding innovative and really novel ways of making sure that food got to people when contact was such an issue. And so I think that was just the beginning for where Delaware can go in terms of thinking of different ways to meet the need. And it was really striking how much the need for food can really bring people together. It was the issue that everyone could get behind and really got together around. So I think so many of the different vehicles that that Modern Maturity Center and some of their other meals providers created to make sure that people could get food when they needed it just showed that we can do things, we can evolve with this. And I think food insecurity, we also learned, especially through COVID, is a continuum. And to Carolyn's point, you know, when there might be some in food insecurity, we still need to be thinking about that when we, you know, try to shift back to normal, for example. But the other issue, so on top of everything that really the meals providers did to not only meet the need of current clients, but really take on a lot more people who needed food at that time, there was a lot of effort between different regional groups. And that was one of the topics I thought, if this was interesting to the group, we could explore a little more about what those partnerships look like, what the lessons learned. And just so DEMA partnered with, and hopefully you guys are familiar with it, but CCC for COVID is a group down in Sussex County that really, they mobilized for a lot of different reasons around COVID, but food and a partnership with the food bank was also part of that. And so I was thinking between the lessons learned of the, the continuum of delivery that we can make available from, door to door versus coming in for a meal and everything in between, but also just looking at partnerships and how different avenues can probably meet different needs. I suggested that that coalition and that partnership right around meals and food as maybe a group we wanted to talk to see if there was something there we wanted to grab.
If I could, I want to share a real quick kind of humorous story. We had, because people call us all the time and say, I need food and everything. So we got a call from this lady who said, it's 1 o'clock and I don't have my food yet. And I was just wondering if it was delayed. And my address is, and she gave us the address, 4350 around. So we started looking, and she was actually calling us from the hospital. And she was in room 4350 over there. So we called back and we said, you're in the hospital. Yes, but I don't like their food. I want your food. And could you please deliver it over here? So, that's just a little sidebar, but, that shows you how important the meals are to the clients that we serve.
Sorry. That's it really is so important, and we can take that back to our friends at the hospitals as well. But you know, on this issue, yes, it would be great to see, you know, regionally what's going on and where we might have opportunities. Are there going to be recommendations that we'll make to our legislators, in addition to the reimbursement and the need for the workforce or the volunteers? Other recommendations as far as geography or growth of these programs with other organizations? Rob? Carolyn, sorry.
I just wanted to mention one thing, because one of the things that we put in place when COVID was really here, although it's still here, but was the grab and go portion, and the division allowed us to do that. And we have discovered that that is extremely popular because people are still afraid to come into a congregate setting. And I don't know how long that they're going to allow us to continue that. But just yesterday, we had 100 people that came in here for a grab and go meal. And, you know, it's better than a McDonald's meal, and it's cheaper than a McDonald's meal. They're reluctant to come in. So I'm hoping that at some point, you know, that's a new niche for us that maybe we can look at continuing to provide there.
Okay. Congratulations on that. That's great too. That's the right word. Thank you on that for that important service. Allison?
I would just say, I think that brings up a really great point. I think there's things that have been done during COVID that certainly we see the value in now. And I think that's a great example where, you know, for a lot of folks that may not be comfortable coming in under COVID times, but also may have other limitations and concerns with being in a congregate setting, I just think that's the thinking outside the box a little bit in terms of how we've done things. Because I mean, if the goal is to have the maximum amount of food, get to the maximum amount of people and support them, in the case of, you know, the food we're talking about, I mean, I think exploring what's worked and new ways of doing things is kind of going to be key in that, because obviously, you know, there's better ways we can do things so more people get food.
I do guess this just naturally leads to a conversation, though, about what it is this subcommittee is trying to achieve in its recommendations and like the level of depth that it will I say realistically, not to suggest we couldn't if we all just, you know, quit our jobs and focus solely on this, but there is a reality about the level of depth in the recommendations that we can provide. And so, you know, I wonder, Chris, Melissa, you know, if we do hear from one of these groups or we do get some more information related to these, it strikes me about identifying like growth opportunities, whether that be partnership, whether that be expansion of messaging, whether that be empowerment of volunteers. I don't know, I'm just kind of throwing out examples, right? And and maybe that is the depth at which we are able to go into. But I guess I can only speak for myself that I'd be remiss to recommend anything at this juncture, because I don't feel like I individually know enough. I will, of course, defer to my colleagues who have been more in the trenches on this, but I do just kind of wonder whether we should be hearing from one of these groups as almost like a briefing style about, you know, what it was, where they're at now, like what are their pain points for some of these programs, and then, you know, we get back together to discuss kind of what's most realistic about how to help these groups. If does that all make sense?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think, Carolyn, you the work that you're doing, we're hearing that from you. So if, you know, if our next Melissa, what we tried to line up, and apologies again, was to hear from individuals that you know and programs that are going on. And Carolyn, you know, if there's anybody from your organization and program that we can hear from our next meeting, that would be great.
You know, and the last thing I'll say, you know, I know it can be difficult to line schedules and get some of these groups on, Melissa. So, you know, at a bare minimum, if we start kind of rubbing up against a timeline, I know this was a little bit contradictory what I just said, but I would be totally comfortable, right? Like putting down kind of generic but meaningful recommendations about the empowerment of these programs, which is, you know, maybe there needs to be like more legislator-led, involvement, right? And I don't know what the procedure on that looks like necessarily, but it's definitely not a stretch to say that if your legislators getting involved, that it's going to get more attention and play and discussion about other areas, right? And that's like somewhat cyclical towards other various constituencies that are involved with legislators, like providers who could theoretically have, a couple volunteers as part of, I can't speak to what Beata's involvement is in this, for instance, but I certainly know that I would be happy, right, to go volunteer a few times a quarter, right, to go impact, like to be part of the movement, right? And there are kind of evergreen recommendations, I think, Carolyn, that we could put forward like that warrant bigger discussion.
I just want to talk just a minute, if I could, about two things. Getting people involved is a great idea. I want to talk, we've been approached by a company, and I wish more companies would do this, but they're going to do a day of service, and they're going to do it next week. They have 30 vehicles, and what they're going to do is they're going to deliver the meals all over the county for us. They're paying their employees that day to deliver the meals throughout the county using all of their vehicles and everything. So I think that's a great way to maybe get some new volunteers. And the other really important thing that's going to be happening is March is actually the 50th anniversary of the Meals on Wheels program. And so we will be inviting dignitaries, legislators, people to come in and pack a meal or deliver a meal. I think that's really, really important. So on March the 24th, we'll be inviting all the legislators to come in because they really don't know all of the mechanics of the program, and they really need to see it in action. And then I think they would understand a little bit more. And so we're going to plan a big day on March 24th. So if any of you would like to come in and help us pack a meal, deliver a meal, just let me know.
That's great. Thank you. That's really exciting. And that's the message that we need to amplify, and Rob, you're talking about like, what could we do? It's amplifying that message and saying this is valuable and this is what we need. Melissa, you had a comment.
Yeah, more to echo on what Rob said earlier, and that's just the power of partnerships. And, just to state the obvious in that the state and the federal government funding is essential because of the nature of government programs. However, absolutely impossible to accomplish the goal without the partnerships of the community. And I think I was reminded by that throughout COVID that no one sector can do it alone. And so I think if anything, in terms of looking for, because I appreciate the need for, like, what are we asking for and what are we looking to happen at the end of this? I think maybe there's something there to help support, strengthen those partnerships to really appreciate the continuum, and that everybody's got a role in meeting the need. And that, so I'll just stop there and say maybe that's one of our recommendations, are looking for ways to support those partnerships so that they continue to rely on the power of volunteer, but maybe they have a little more of a backbone beyond that to support the good work that they do.
Thank you. Apologies to everyone. Again, we've had a great discussion. We only have a few more minutes, and we did have some room for public comment. Do we have anyone who does have their hand up or who has a comment procedurally? Will and team, is there anybody else that we need to hear from?
It would seem that all attendees are members of the subgroup and or support staff.
Okay.
But I will say, for anybody watching this stream that's not in the webinar, if you would like to submit written public comment, please send it to william.lescas@delaware.gov. That is william.lescas@delaware.gov.
Excellent. Thanks, Will. Will, can I ask you to stay on for one other item that we had discussed, and I don't know if we've shared yet with the the whole group. You had mentioned to me also another task force that's doing some important work. I think we should especially acknowledge right now, and in the month that we're celebrating Black History, the African American Task Force has some recommendations that they're going to be making. Would you highlight that for us? Because I think it's important, especially as we're talking about disparities in this committee.
Yes, of course. So one of the forthcoming recommendations from the African American Task Force is going to be the creation of a standing body, essentially to carry on the work of that task force. There'll be a permanent fixture within the state that specifically is going to be looking at racial disparity. And even, I mean, obviously, given the nature of this conversations and talking about what the subgroup feels comfortable putting forth in recommendations, just knowing that they're, I mean, it's nothing's official yet. It's still a recommendation, and I'm not even sure if the recommendation's been finalized yet. But at the same time, I guess, you know, realizing that even if it's a call for further research, that the state may have a designated body to look at some of these disparities going forward could be useful.
Who's leading this subcommittee or this committee?
The subgroup, so the African American Task Force. I'm actually blanking on the chairs, but I can after the meeting I'll send out an email.
That'd be great.
And I think they have 6 subgroups as well. I mean, it's been going for 2 years. It's finally putting everything together into a final recommendation. But I mean, it's been a huge undertaking and really, I would say, really positive, positive outcome for the state to take a big step forward on this.
You know, William, you just said something totally separate of all of that. You just said something, Chris, that is worth going on record on, that he just told us that it took 2 years to get recommendations for that, right? And, you know, given the nature of society right now, everything we're talking about, I don't want to say it'll be moot, but 2 years is a long time to wait, right? And for us, I do worry about some of the things that we put forward here expiring or becoming less relevant than other things, or the people who are on this call are no longer working on these issues or whatever, right? And I say that because the state has a lengthy track record of taking a long time to do some of these things. So I just say that as part of our recommendations. I think time is of the essence, right? Like, should be one of those things, right? That we can't sit around, like, there's such thing as overthinking it. And we know these issues are prevalent and require attention and empowerment. And I don't think we can walk and chew gum, right? I don't think we need a report on a report on a report, which tends to happen. So
Appreciate that. And I think from our state senator and representatives who have been involved in this work and the larger working group, they are at the same spot, at least from what we've heard. We are in the midst and we need to respond quickly. And so thank you all. We have reached our time. I don't know if we need a—
Do I have time for one quick comment?
Please, yes.
Okay. I'm thinking outside the box and knowing where our volunteer force is going, and they're all aging in place, and they're going to be receiving meals before too long. I was wondering if somehow we could work something out with the state employees where they would encourage and give the state employees some time off during the day to go out and help deliver meals, not just in Kent County, but throughout the state. Encourage that volunteerism, and and let some of the state employees piggyback with us to help deliver meals.
I'm glad you brought that up, Carolyn. I think we've done that just with our division and received really good participation. And so I love it. Let's open it all the way.
Let's do it.
State employee. I like it.
Okay. All right, I've been taking notes. I know our team has as well. Thank you, and thanks for that excellent idea to close out our meeting. Again, sorry for a late start. Thank you to all for the work that you're doing. It's so important, so critical, like we talked about. We'll close out our meeting. I guess, do we have a larger working group next? And then we'll look at some point to schedule our follow-up. Is that subcommittee? Is that how we'll proceed?
Yes. So the next full working group meeting will be Friday, February 25th. So I'll be sending out a poll to get that next meeting scheduled, hopefully for early March.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Thank you,
Thanks for your
everyone.
leadership.
Have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, Chris and Melissa.
Bye.